Wow, aren't we lucky to have heard that original recording of a man in 1524 waking up at 8:30 a.m. after a long night on the booze. Simply magnificent. Hello and welcome back to the final couplet with me, Theo Cowan. Another week, another sonnet. Today we are looking at Sonnet 129. A little heads up that next week I will be joined by a guest for, I'd say, one of Shakespeare's most famous sonnets. You will definitely recognise next week's sonnet. And you know what? You might recognise this week's. I really, really like this week's. Spoiler alert. I think it's one of his finest ones. It's very intense. It's sexual. May contain scenes of a sexual nature. So there's your warning. Let's have a listen, shall we? Sonnet 129. The expense of spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action. And till action, lust is perjured, murd'rous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust, enjoyed no sooner but despisèd straight, past reason hunted, and no sooner had past reason hated as a swallowed bait on purpose laid to make the taker mad. Mad in pursuit, and in possession so, had, having, and in quest to have, extreme, a bliss in proof, and proved a very woe, before a joy proposed, behind a dream. All this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. Well, there we have it, Sonnet 129, and I told you it would be sexual, lustful. There's something about reading this one out loud that's really fun. It feels quite exciting, dare I say, to read. So I advise you to look it up, Sonnet 129, have a little read of it out loud yourself if you fancy it. It's a really nice one to get your mouth round. Some great words in there, and it's got a sort of natural pace to it and sort of anger, and in a way the reading of the poem is almost lustful. It's lust in action in a way, I'd say. So give it a go. You might surprise yourself. And I guess the overarching meaning of this poem is how destructive lust can be. Specifically, the difference to the lustful lead-up to sex and the act of sex itself. And the consequences of that, and how amazing sex can be, and lust can be, but also how damaging and horrible it can be as well. It is the human struggle, as Shakespeare sort of puts it here. Right, so let's dive into it line by line and work out what the hell Shakespeare was going on about in Sonnet 129. So we start with, the expensive spirit in a waste of shame is lust in action. I mean, what an opening line that is. That is just, wow, it just hits you, doesn't it? And here I think he's saying, having sex spends all your vital energy and leaves you in shame. That's the opening headline. Wow, what a headline. And he continues with, until action, lust is, then a long list of what lust is. So the anticipation of sex leads people to be perjured, murd'rous, bloody, full of blame, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, not to trust. That's a hell of a list there. I don't think I need to translate those for you. It's all pretty self-explanatory. He's essentially saying, in anticipation of sex, this makes people all of these things. Then he continues with, enjoyed no sooner, but despised straight. So then the moment is enjoyed, and as soon as you've enjoyed it, as soon as you've had sex, it is immediately hated. It's despised. So you've had sex. Wow, fantastic. This is great. I love sex. And then, oh God, horrible. I mean, I don't know what sex Shakespeare's having, but I don't think that's the feeling everyone has after sex, is it? But he is kind of saying that is what people are feeling. That's what all men feel after sex. I don't know, maybe it was different back then. Past reason hunted, and no sooner had past reason hated as a swallowed bait on purpose laid to make the taker mad. So this is a similar thought to the line before, but he's saying you irrationally chase it. So you chase after sex irrationally. And once you've had it, you hate it just as irrationally as when you chased it. So it's all irrational here, really. It's like a trap designed to make you crazy. So lust is maddening, but you can't help it, is what he's saying here, really. It doesn't make any sense, and it drives you round the bend. Then he continues on the mad theme. Mad in pursuit and in possession so. So again, you're mad while you're chasing sex and mad while having it. Had, having, and in quest to have, extreme. So before, during, and after you've had it, it is intense. A bliss in proof and proved a very woe. So in the moment it feels blissful. There's no denying that. But afterwards brings true misery. So again, he's talking about the post-sex blues, basically. Here, I think is his vibe, and he clearly is very, very miserable after sex. But I guess what he's saying is the lust before and the act of sex is maybe feels a bit sinful because lust is maybe a sinful act to Shakespeare. It feels grubby. It doesn't feel right. Which to me feels like a religious thing at the time. You know, lust is thought of as sinful. So then we have before a joy proposed, behind a dream. So again, it's the same meaning here, but he's saying before it promises joy. So before the act, you're like, woo, here we go, this is going to be incredible. But afterwards, a dream, and I think here he probably means a bad dream because he's been saying that afterwards is bad. So it's not a dream like, oh, that was amazing, but it's, you know, it's like, oh God, that was terrible. I think is what he's getting at here. It'd be weird to change his tone so suddenly there towards the end and actually say it was a dream, it was amazing, I loved it. Didn't have any bad feelings about it. And now we're on to the final couplet. All this the world well knows, yet none knows well to shun the heaven that leads men to this hell. And what a final couplet that is. Here he's saying all the world knows this very well. So we all know about this lust and this shame post-sex. Yet no one knows enough to avoid the incredible pleasure that you get from it that leads all men into hell. So we all know this is a thing. I mean, this is what he's saying. I don't personally know that this is a thing. I don't personally get this, but I'm sure there are people that do. And back then, I think, you know, lust was thought of very differently. But he's saying we all know that this is a bit grubby and lust is a very intense thing, and so is sex. And we know that afterwards we're not going to feel great. We're going to feel terrible. We're going to be miserable. It's going to be like a bad dream. But we still bloody do it, don't we? We still go through the motions, get lustful, have sex. It still happens, and you can't escape that because the pleasure is so great, is what Shakespeare's saying. It's an interesting sonnet, this, isn't it? I think Shakespeare needs to pop to the therapist maybe and have a little chat about these feelings that he's having. Right, I think it's about time we put this to our story. And if you remember last week, Shakespeare has fallen head over heels for this dark lady, as she's referred to, who has these beautiful dark features. Shakespeare is very obsessed. He's in Stratford-upon-Avon, of course, at this time. And she said, well, why don't you come to this party? But she's being, she's not going straight into Shakespeare and saying, oh, I love you, Shakespeare. She's being sort of, quite reserved about the whole thing. And she said, yeah, come to my party if you want. And Shakespeare's like, hell yeah, I'll really want to go to that party. So he turns up, and there's quite a few people there, a lot of men. And Shakespeare's like, you all right? How's everyone doing? He goes into the drawing room, and there she is. The dark lady comes in, and she walks over to the piano, and she starts playing this tune. And Shakespeare in his head, he's like, wow, God, this is amazing. I wish I were the keys that this woman is playing. And those keys are so lucky. And then for some mad reason, he thinks, you know what, I'm going to write a sonnet about that. And I'm going to read it out to everyone when she's finished. So the dark lady finishes playing the piano piece. And Shakespeare says, sorry, everyone, can you all just stop for a second? I've got a poem that I've just written. And I'm going to read it out to you lot, if that's all right. And so he reads Sonnet 128. Which basically ends in him saying, I wish that this woman would kiss me on the lips. So let's see how that goes down with the dark lady and indeed all of the other men in the drawing room. And then how Sonnet 129 fits into all this. Shakespeare finishes reading Sonnet 128 to the drawing room full of men and the dark lady. A heavy silence descends on the room. No one quite knows what to say. Did Shakespeare just say that he wanted to kiss this woman in front of everyone? The dark lady gets up from her piano stool. She walks over to him, shaking her head. And she says, William Shakespeare. That is your name, isn't it? Shakespeare says, yes. Do you really think that after hearing that sonnet, I'm going to kiss you on the lips? After you said that you wanted to be one of the wooden keys under my fingers? You little pervert. Shakespeare is astonished. His sonnets usually go down so well. They usually work on all the ladies, and they all want to kiss him after them. But she seems immune to his writing powers. Well, yes, I thought it was a rather well-written sonnet. And she says, stop there, Shakespeare. She puts her finger up to his lips. Don't patronise me. Shakespeare said, no, I'm not patronising you. She said, I know what good writing is. And that was not good writing. It was crude. And Shakespeare said, I'm sorry, I thought it was rather romantic. Well, you thought wrong. Now, sorry everyone, I'm going up to bed. I'll see you all in the morrow. And with that, she turns on her heels and walks out of the room. Another silence descends. The men look at each other. Shakespeare says, what are you all looking at? Go back to talking and what not. The men start mumbling to each other and shuffling around. And Shakespeare says, actually, sorry, can I just ask you, what are you all doing here? Why are there so many men in this drawing room? Where are the women? What's going on? One of the men, a chap named Harold, walks over to Shakespeare and says, Shakespeare, come with me, I need to tell you something. So Shakespeare walks with Harold into the lovely garden that is, of course, attached to the house. They light a cigarette and share it for some reason between them. Shakespeare would have liked his own cigarette, but he'll have to make do with this. Harold says, Shakespeare, do you want to know why all these men are here in this living room? Shakespeare says, yeah, I do. That's what I asked. That was my question. Well, Shakespeare, it's because we all love the Dark Lady. And Shakespeare says, does the Dark Lady have a name? That's a good question, Shakespeare. No, she doesn't have a name. Well, she probably does, but we don't actually know it. We just know her as the Dark Lady because of her lovely dark features that we all love so much. And Shakespeare says, so you all love her. You all want to be with her. And the man says, yes, that's exactly it. We come to these parties every week in the hope that one of us might get to at least maybe hug her or hold her hand or something like that. And Shakespeare said, God, how long have you been doing this for? And Harold says, well, I've been coming here for 2 years every week, but some of the men in there, well, they've been coming here for a decade, maybe more. Shakespeare says, good God, she's beautiful, but is she that beautiful? Then Shakespeare and Harold look at each other and both say, yes, she is, to be fair. She is that beautiful. And Shakespeare says, so has anyone got lucky? And Harold says, no, absolutely not. But there's always the hope of next week, isn't there? And Shakespeare says, yeah, I guess there is. God, we're all so desperate, aren't we, us men? And Harold says, I suppose so. Look at us all. Lustful, desperate for a bit of sex. And then once you've had it, you just feel crap about yourself, don't you? Harold says, well, I don't personally feel bad after sex necessarily. And Shakespeare says, well, you bloody should, because the act of lust and sex is sinful. Harold says, okay. Well, I guess it's a good job I'm not having it then. Shakespeare says, you're pathetic, aren't you, Harold? And all of you men, he goes back into the drawing room, he says, all of you men are disgusting. Desperate little lustful creatures. It is pathetic. The men look up at him. They nod a little, in agreement. There might be something right about what Shakespeare's saying. And Shakespeare says, bear with me 1 second, gentlemen. I must write something about this. And quickly he runs to the toilet for some reason. He likes to write in the toilet sometimes. And he quickly bashes out Sonnet 129. He hurriedly runs back into the room where only 2 men remain. Everyone else has left because they're not that desperate to hear Shakespeare's next sonnet. Harold is one of the men. The other is a short chap with a little moustache. Shakespeare says, oh, well, I had hoped for a rather bigger audience, but I suppose you 2 gents will have to do. And he clears his throat. And then the man with the moustache says, oh, sorry, I actually have to go, so, sorry. Sorry about that. Good luck with the sonnet. And then he slinks out. So it's just Shakespeare and Harold in the drawing room of the Dark Lady's house. And Shakespeare says, well, Harold, I guess you're about to hear a master at work. He clears his throat and reads Sonnet 129. Having sex spends all your vital energy and leaves you in shame. In anticipation of sex, lust makes people murderous, violent, full of guilt, savage, extreme, rude, cruel, and untrustworthy. The moment it's enjoyed, it is then immediately hated. You irrationally chase it, and once you've had it, you hate it just as irrationally, like a trap designed to make you crazy. You're mad whilst chasing sex, and mad whilst having it. Before, during, and after you have had it, it is intense. It feels blissful in the moment, but afterwards brings true misery. Before, it promises joy, but afterwards, it's like a bad dream. All the world knows this very well. Yet no one knows enough to avoid the incredible pleasure that leads men into this hell. So, there we have it, Sonnet 129 and the story to go with it. I wonder if Harold enjoyed Sonnet 129 and whether Shakespeare might get a kiss from the Dark Lady eventually. Find out next week. Until then,